The ballroom of the Grand Manila Hotel glowed like a palace carved from gold. Crystal chandeliers spilled warm light over marble floors, silk gowns, and polished shoes that never touched dust. Tonight was a charity gala for the city's elite, a place where donations were announced loudly and compassion was worn like jewelry. At the center of the stage rested a magnificent black grand piano, its surface gleaming, waiting for a performer worthy of the room. Near the tall glass doors, unnoticed at first, stood a young Filipino boy no older than 12. His shirt was faded and too big, the sleeves frayed at the edges. His slippers were worn thin, and his hair was messy from the humid streets outside. He had wandered in after seeing a poster about music on the hotel wall. The piano had pulled him in like a quiet voice calling his name. He stood still, afraid to move, afraid to be seen, yet unable to look away from the instrument. Across the room, the millionaire's wife laughed softly with her circle of wealthy friends. Dressed in a designer gown, diamonds resting easily on her neck, she scanned the room with practiced pride. Then her eyes landed on the boy. Her smile tightened. She leaned closer to her friends and whispered something sharp, glancing back at him. They followed her gaze and chuckled behind raised glasses. "Charity really brings everyone in," she said mockingly. "Even those who don't belong." The boy felt their eyes like cold rain. His shoulders sank. He took a small step back, wishing he could disappear into the shadows. But even as humiliation burned his chest, his gaze returned to the piano. He remembered fingers on keys, soft songs in a tiny room, and a voice telling him music could take him anywhere. The woman smirked, unaware that the quiet boy she mocked was standing at the edge of a moment that would soon change her life forever. The boy remained near the edge of the ballroom, his heart pounding as the soft music and laughter blurred into distant noise. The smell of expensive perfume mixed with polished wood felt unfamiliar, almost unreal. He clasped his hands together, rough palms pressing tight, as memories quietly crept in, memories far removed from chandeliers and silk gowns. He remembered a tiny rented room with cracked walls and a leaking roof. That room had once been filled with music. His mother, tired from cleaning houses all day, would sit beside a small, broken keyboard they had found in the trash. Some keys worked, others didn't, but she taught him anyway. "Play from the heart," she always said, guiding his fingers gently. "Even broken things can make beautiful sounds." After she passed away, music became his only comfort. He played wherever he could, outside stores, near bus terminals, sometimes chased away by angry voices. Hunger was common. Hope was rare. But the piano was his dream. Every grand instrument he saw felt like a promise he wasn't sure life would ever keep. Back in the ballroom, the millionaire's wife noticed the boy still standing there. Annoyance crossed her face. She waved her hand dismissively and spoke loudly enough for others to hear. "Why is he still here?" she said with a laugh. "Does he think this is a playground?" Her friends smiled, amused. One of them glanced at the piano and joked, "Maybe he wants to play." The woman's eyes lit up with cruel amusement. "Oh," she said, raising her voice. "You play the piano, boy." A few guests turned to look. She chuckled, shaking her head. "Go on then. Show us." Laughter rippled through the crowd. The boy's cheeks burned. His feet felt heavy, glued to the floor. He knew they expected him to fail. He knew they wanted entertainment, not music. But somewhere deep inside, his mother's voice returned, soft, steady, fearless. Slowly, trembling but determined, the boy took his first step toward the piano. The ballroom slowly quieted as the boy approached the grand piano. Each step felt heavier than the last, his worn slippers whispering against the polished marble floor. Eyes followed him now, curious, doubtful, some openly amused. The millionaire's wife crossed her arms, a confident smile resting on her lips, certain she was about to witness a public embarrassment. The boy stopped in front of the piano. Up close, it looked even more magnificent than he had imagined. The black surface reflected his thin frame and nervous face. For a moment, fear wrapped around his chest. This instrument was worth more than his entire life. His hands hovered in the air, shaking slightly. He closed his eyes. The room held its breath. When his fingers finally touched the keys, the first note echoed softly through the hall, clean, gentle, and perfectly placed. A second note followed, then a flowing melody that seemed to rise and fall like waves. The laughter stopped. Conversations faded. Glasses paused mid-air. What began as a simple tune quickly grew into something deep and emotional, filled with longing, loss, and hope. The boy played as if the world around him no longer existed. His fingers moved with quiet confidence, dancing across the keys with a grace that surprised even him. Every note carried pieces of his life, the nights of hunger, the loneliness, the love of a mother who believed in him. The piano responded as if it had been waiting just for him. The millionaire's wife felt her smile slowly disappear. Her breath caught. The sound struck something buried deep inside her chest. This was no street performance. This was real music, raw and honest. Her eyes widened as memories stirred, memories she had long ignored. Around the room, guests stood frozen, faces softened by disbelief. Some felt chills. Others blinked away sudden tears. No one spoke. No one dared move. In that moment, the boy was no longer poor or invisible. He was a musician, commanding the room with nothing but H. As the boy's music grew stronger, the melody shifted, soft turning to sorrow, sorrow rising into powerful emotion. The sound filled every corner of the ballroom, wrapping itself around the listeners like a living thing. The millionaire's wife felt her chest tighten. Her confident posture weakened, and she slowly lowered herself into a nearby chair, her eyes locked on the boy. The tune was painfully familiar. Years ago, before wealth, before status, before pride shaped her life, her father used to play this very melody on an old piano at home. He was not rich, but he was kind. He believed music was meant to heal, not impress. She remembered sitting beside him, listening with innocent wonder. But when he died, she chose a different life, one built on money, image, and control. Somewhere along the way, she had silenced the music in her heart. Now it was back. Tears welled in her eyes as the boy played on, unaware of the storm he had awakened. Each note felt like a mirror, reflecting her cruelty from moments earlier. She remembered her laughter, her mocking words, and the way the boy's shoulders had sunk under her gaze. Shame washed over her, heavy and unavoidable. Around her, the guests sensed the shift. Some noticed her trembling hands. Others saw her wipe her cheeks quickly, trying to hide her tears. The woman who once ruled the room with confidence now looked small and fragile. The boy's fingers slowed, drawing out the final section of the piece. The melody softened, almost forgiving, like a gentle goodbye. The last note lingered in the air, trembling, then faded into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The millionaire's wife stood, her legs unsteady. The applause had not yet begun, but her heart was already pounding louder than any clapping. She realized something undeniable in that silence. This poor boy, whom she had mocked without mercy, had just broken through the walls she spent a lifetime building around her heart. Silence hung in the ballroom for a brief, fragile moment after the final note faded. Then, as if the room had awakened from a spell, applause erupted. It began with a few claps, hesitant and stunned, and quickly grew into thunder. Guests rose to their feet, some cheering, others wiping tears from their eyes. The boy stood slowly from the piano bench, unsure of what to do, his hands still trembling at his sides. He looked out at the crowd, overwhelmed. He had expected laughter, maybe even anger. Instead, he saw admiration, something he had never received before. His eyes searched the room, confused, until they landed on the millionaire's wife. She stepped forward, her expensive heels echoing sharply against the marble floor. The crowd parted for her, expecting another sharp remark, another display of power. But when she reached the stage, she did something no one expected. She knelt. Gasps rippled through the room. The boy froze, startled. Tears streamed freely down her face now, no longer hidden. "I am sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I judged you by your clothes, not your heart. And you taught me more in minutes than money ever could." She stood and took a breath, turning to the stunned audience. "Tonight, this boy reminded me of who I used to be, and who I failed to become." She offered him more than charity. She promised education, music training, and a future shaped by opportunity. But more importantly, she offered respect. The boy nodded shyly, his eyes shining, not for wealth, but because his music had finally been heard. That night became a turning point. The woman later founded music programs for underprivileged children across the Philippines. And the boy, once mocked and invisible, became the symbol of a truth the room would never forget. A single song, played from the heart, can change a life forever.